Claire no longer waited for Mark's messages. She kept her phone on silent, tucked away in drawers she barely opened. What began as a quiet refuge in the stables became her escape. Each day, her visits stretched longer. She fed Shadow slowly, spoke more freely. Her words grew intimate, unfiltered. "You're the only one who listens," she said one afternoon, her fingers resting gently on his mane. Shadow stood still, patient. She started writing in a small notebook, pages filled with thoughts she couldn't share with anyone else. She wrote about the emptiness of the house, the coldness of Mark's voice, the way Shadow's presence filled a silence no human had ever managed to. She never planned to show anyone. These words were meant for herself, and maybe for him. Mark called less. When he did, it was brief. Schedules, updates, a vague plan to visit. Claire no longer waited for his return. She avoided their bedroom, preferring the guest room where his scent didn't linger. Her dreams grew vivid. She saw fields without fences, galloping under open skies, wind in her hair, and nothing holding her back. In those dreams, she was never alone. Shadow ran beside her, strong, wild, unwavering. Claire noticed how her body responded when she was near him. Her breathing slowed. Her hands trembled slightly when brushing near his face. She caught herself applying lipstick before heading to the stables. It wasn't for Mark. It hadn't been for him in years. She started speaking differently, softer, slower, as if savoring each word. She told Shadow about her youth, about the first time Mark kissed her, about how even then she knew something was missing. She confessed her fears, that she would grow old, invisible, untouched, unloved. Shadow never moved, just watched her, steady and calm. The line between caretaker and something else blurred. She touched him longer, leaned into his warmth. Her heart betrayed her before her body did. This wasn't just comfort, it was desire, unspoken but burned. Claire's mornings began with silence, the kind that pressed against the walls, lingering long after the kettle cooled. She moved through her house like a guest, her footsteps echoing off floors that hadn't felt warmth in weeks. The bed stayed half-made. Her phone lit up with messages from Mark. Quick check-ins, meeting delays, generic emojis. Nothing heartfelt, nothing that said, "I miss you." She stopped replying. Mark had changed, or maybe she had. When they bought this land, he spoke of freedom, of slow mornings and shared dreams. But freedom turned into work trips, late-night emails, and empty promises. He stayed in the city more now, said the countryside slowed him down. Claire wondered when she became the thing that slowed him down. She started visiting the stables more, drawn by a comfort she couldn't explain. There, among the hay and quiet breath of animals, she found Shadow, a black stallion with eyes that held stories. He didn't flinch when she spoke. He didn't turn away when she cried. He listened. Every morning, she brushed him in silence. Her hands moved gently across his coat, and something in her chest relaxed. He breathed evenly, sometimes tilting his head in her touch. She began speaking to him, soft, low confessions that felt too heavy to say out loud anywhere else. "I don't think he sees me anymore," she whispered once. Shadow blinked, calm, present. That was more than Mark ever offered these days. She lingered longer after chores were done. Sometimes she sat in the straw, legs tucked under, watching Shadow move. He didn't judge her silence. She didn't have to smile for him. There were no masks here, no rehearsed words, just the sound of breath and the rhythm of hooves shifting gently against the floor. Her world shrank to these stolen moments. She stopped checking the time. Dinner grew cold on the table more often. Mark's absences stopped bothering her as much. In fact, she stopped noticing altogether. And when she did, it didn't hurt. Mark never came back. Not to visit, not to collect what he left behind. His silence was louder than anything he'd said in those final days. Claire didn't reach out. She let the quiet settle, let the judgment from neighbors pass through her like wind. They whispered. She heard them, but they didn't matter. None of them had lived in her silence. None of them had tasted what it was like to be forgotten while still being touched. Life moved forward. She sold Mark's car, cleared out his closet, every trace of him, removed piece by piece until the house no longer remembered him. The stables became her world. Every day began and ended there. She no longer counted hours. She moved by instinct, emotion, presence. Her days were honest, if nothing else. The notebook stayed locked in a drawer, not from shame, but because it had done its job. The words were part of her now. She didn't need reminders. She knew who she was, what she'd chosen. People came and went with assumptions. She gave them nothing. No explanations, no excuses. There were moments when she thought about what could have been if Mark had tried. If he had seen her, touched her the way she longed for. But those thoughts faded. Regret required doubt, and she didn't doubt the truth she'd lived. Love, in its purest form, was not always clean, not always conventional. Sometimes it came where it shouldn't. Sometimes it stayed. Shadow remained her anchor, not because he was a symbol of rebellion, but because he had been there when she unraveled, when she stopped pretending. He held her secrets, her softness, her fire. He had given her something Mark never did. Permission to feel without filter. She found peace in the discomfort, in not needing to be understood. There was a strange freedom in being the villain of someone else's story. She didn't try to rewrite it. She didn't need to be forgiven. She'd chosen truth over pretense, presence over performance. She stood one morning, eyes closed, air thick with spring, and Mark found the notebook. He hadn't been looking for it, but once he read the first few lines, he didn't stop. Pages filled with words that had nothing to do with him. Confessions, longings, and something darker. When Claire returned from the stables that evening, he was waiting. The notebook open, his expression unreadable. "What is this?" he asked, voice flat. Claire didn't answer. There was nothing to say that would make sense to him. She reached for the notebook, but he pulled it away. "You've lost your mind," he said, and it wasn't anger. It was something colder. Disgust. "You write to a horse like he's your lover." She looked at him, really looked, and saw nothing left between them. "Because he listens. Because he sees me." Mark scoffed. "You're sick." "No," she said. "I've been empty for years, and you didn't even notice." The argument didn't escalate. It dragged. Quiet, cruel. Mark didn't yell. He simply walked away, muttering about needing air. Claire didn't follow. She didn't apologize. There was nothing left to salvage. He packed a bag the next morning. She watched from the doorway, unmoved. "You should talk to someone," he said, not looking at her. "About whatever this is." She nodded once. "Already did." He paused, unsure what that meant. She didn't explain. He left without another word. The silence returned, but it wasn't lonely anymore. She stopped opening curtains, let the house stay dim. Her world narrowed. She didn't speak to neighbors. Calls went unanswered. She didn't care what anyone thought. Her choices were hers now. Shadow remained constant, steady, the one place her thoughts didn't twist. She never read the notebook again. Didn't need to. Every word was already etched inside her. She no longer felt conflicted. The line she had once tiptoed around had vanished. It wasn't about crossing it. It was about realizing it never mattered. One night, while thunder rolled in the distance, she whispered to him. He saw what he needed to. Claire stopped pretending. The guilt that once lingered now dulled into something quieter, almost defensible. Mark wasn't here. He hadn't really been for years. She started to believe it wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Each time she stepped into the stables, she felt more like herself, more alive. Shadow had become the center of that feeling. Not just comfort, not just routine, something more. She noticed how she anticipated the sound of his breathing, the soft weight of his gaze. Her hands moved slower now, with intention. She didn't flinch when her fingertips trailed along the curve of his neck, or when her cheek brushed against his shoulder. There was a pull, quiet but magnetic. She'd never admit it aloud, but she didn't have to. Her body already had. The dreams returned stronger, more vivid. She woke with flushed cheeks, her breath shallow, as if she'd just escaped something wild and intoxicating. She didn't try to stop them anymore. There, she wasn't just wanted, she was needed.